Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday evening to you all. Hope you guys had an awesome day out there and a great start to your week. Hopefully, some of you folks maybe just have the week off, maybe a few days off, and maybe you have to work the whole week. But regardless, hope you guys are having an awesome start to your week. Got you a big update this evening on what's going on with the obvious and the weather, which is this Arctic blast and then a major storm system associated with it. We're going to go over all the latest information from the last 11 to 12 hours since we made the video this morning. We're going to talk about how cold it can potentially get, these dangerous wind chills, how strong the winds can get. And we're really just, as far as going over how the storm can unfold, we're going to just only go over the European. We're going to step away from the GFS and just stop comparing and contrasting them. These models are really came together now, and we're just going to take a look at the European. But what we are going to do is compare a bunch of model guidance as far as how much snow can potentially fall. We'll go over 3, 4, 5 different models, and we'll talk about really what we can begin to now expect. Of course, we're going to have some tweaks all the way up into game time, but a lot of people are wondering. But I can tell you, some model guidance has somewhat came together a little bit better today, but there is still going to be ticks until the storm really cranks up around Wednesday into Thursday. So we'll break it down. Stay tuned if you're in the southeast towards the end of the video, or either skip right ahead. We're going to talk about a little piece of energy that I've been talking about over the last several videos that I'm really watching, guys. I really think something is going to try to be sneaky just after Christmas, just after this first system. So I'm going to talk about that. Nothing's set in stone. Nothing is forecasted. But, you know, that's part of talking weather, is not just coming on here and showing you a bunch of models, giving you my ideas, thoughts also, and throw it in the mix. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It helps to get these videos out there. Helps with the algorithm on YouTube, and more people can see it. And I really appreciate you folks doing that. Thank you all for the amazing support over the last about 2 weeks. I mean, I've had massive growth. The views have skyrocketed. I picked up a lot of subscribers. So just want to say welcome to anybody who's new to the channel. Welcome to the channel. It's a family type atmosphere. It's a little bit of the more personal level. I don't always have that professional touch to it. I try to talk to you folks like you're right in front of me. And that's just how we do here. So hit me up on Twitter, guys. I'm telling you. I know not everybody has social media. I get it. Facebook, but definitely Twitter. I make updates almost on the hour when it gets very active. It's a great way to follow along. So hit me up there. If not, that's totally cool. Follow me here. But if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can too. And I promise you, people in the comments will pray over it. We're a bunch of prayer warriors here, and we definitely look out for one another. And more importantly, God does. So let's get rolling. Watches and warnings. We'll talk about this very quickly. You see this kind of weird greenish color right here, almost green mixed with gray. That is wind chill watches. These more lighter colors that might be a little harder to see on your screen. You click on this, and these are actually wind chill warnings. So it's getting serious. And I just clicked on a random area here in Nebraska. It's getting serious, guys. All these teal areas, bluish colors, that's winter storm watches. So, there's already watches ahead of time. Now, some people are wondering, what about blizzard watches, Mitch? You said there's a blizzard coming. Well, they got rid of blizzard watches. There is blizzard warnings, but basically winter storm watches is the basic kind of bottom category. And then it goes up from there. It gets... when it goes to a winter weather advisory from these winter storm watches, that's considered an upgrade, even though we're so used to winter storm watches upgrading to a winter storm warning. And that'll be for most of the case for all these people. But this is just kind of the base level that tells you that, hey, winter weather is on the way. You got plenty of these up here. So we're going to keep rolling. We're going to first talk about temperatures. We'll break it down. We'll take a look at the GFS ensembles. I feel like that's a good thing to look at in this range. And I feel like the models are kind of coming together. The timing on this cold front still going to could be the difference of 4 to 6 hours. But in general, it's kind of coming together to a good timing. So we'll stop this around Wednesday afternoon. At any time you're confused about the timing that I'm mentioning in this videos, look up here because I might forget. But don't focus so much on Zulu time, 21Z. I'll help you out there. But if you're confused at what day we're at, look up here. WED 21st obviously stands for Wednesday, December the 21st, here in the next 2 days. So the front starts to drop down. These are high temperatures in the Dakotas and Montana, well below zero. Same thing for the northern half of Minnesota. High temperature in Minneapolis, right around 0 degrees. So it's already cold in areas of the Mississippi Valley, the Midwest, but nothing compared to what we're about to see. Watch how this front drops down. I cannot reiterate this enough, how extremely tight the gradient on this front is, meaning it'll be one temperature 1 minute, and then maybe 6 hours later, it's as much as 35 degrees colder. It's going to be very, very dynamic as far as how just quick these temperatures drop. But we're going all the way into the middle of the night, Wednesday night into Thursday. The front is splitting Kansas in half. Already moved through most of Nebraska where you're well below zero. Omaha, the front's about to move through, and then by the time you're waking up tomorrow in Omaha, Nebraska, you're below zero. Same thing with Des Moines. You might go to sleep and it's, in the teens. By the time you wake up tomorrow morning, you're below zero. This front starts to blast through areas of Oklahoma. You're waking up Thursday morning of the 22nd. The front's just moved through Kansas City. You're in the single digits. But look, over here in St. Louis, you're just in the mid-30s. Chicago, low to mid-30s. All of Illinois, same kind of deal. This front starts to dig, and then it starts to move more of a west to east kind of directional flow to it. So, you're waking up. This is a great example of how dynamic and how much the temperature drops and how fast it drops. For example, Dallas-Fort Worth area, Thursday morning, waking up to maybe the 40s. You're thinking, okay, well, it's just not that bad for late December. By the time you get to around lunchtime in Dallas, it's in the mid-20s, maybe colder. It's in the single digits in Oklahoma City around lunchtime. Kansas City around 0 degrees. The front's moving through St. Louis. You're dropping into the teens. Shreveport, you could rise to around 50 degrees, and by the time you get 3 hours later into the afternoon hours, it's in the 30s. Same thing with Memphis. It's in the 40s, for example, around Thursday midday, rising into the 40s, thinking, okay, not too bad, right? By the time you're heading home from work, it might be in the 20s and teens. That's how dynamic this is, just how quick the temperature drops. It starts to move into Chicago. At this point, it's almost colder. It's colder in Oklahoma City than it is Chicago. So it just tells you how this front's digging. It's just a little bit different. The cold is blasting southeast. But look how cold, as we're getting, let's go all the way to Friday morning. You're waking up to low teens in Dallas, single digits for Oklahoma City, well below zero. Well, not well below, but definitely a few degrees below zero in Kansas City. In St. Louis, Chicago, around 5 degrees, and it's snowing. That's the thing, is a lot of these areas, it's still snowing. 3 degrees in Nashville, down here in Jackson, Mississippi, low teens. Birmingham, low teens. And we'll keep this going. We'll talk about the eastern U.S. here in a second. And, as you're getting into the 23rd, you're not getting above freezing down here in most of Texas. Shreveport, not getting above freezing. All these areas you see. Find your state. It's wild. By the time you get into Christmas Eve morning, not quite as bad in Texas. It's still extremely cold up here in the Midwest, though. Below zero, single digits for the Mississippi Valley. And as we're getting into afternoon temps for Christmas Eve, it's still very cold down here. But you're in the low 30s. You're still not above freezing in Oklahoma City. Still the teens for Kansas City. Still the single digits for Omaha. Des Moines, you're still in the single digits for highs Christmas Eve. And you're in the single digits for highs for Chicago, Paducah, Kentucky, Springfield, Illinois, single digits. Memphis, only in the 20s. And then by the time you get into Christmas morning, still very cold. And then Christmas Day for this area, you're warming back into the 40s for Dallas. Temperatures begin to moderate and you guys begin to thaw out in this part of the country, but it's still locked into an Arctic air mass up here. You go on and switch it. In fact, no, got to switch it to the eastern U.S. and we got to back this up a little bit to the beginning of this front. How does this front blast through the eastern U.S.? Well, watch the Ohio Valley, right? Thursday afternoon, warming into the 30s and 40s in Ohio. Same thing with Indiana. Same thing with Michigan, Kentucky, well into the 40s. Tennessee into the 40s and 50s. By the time you get to about the late evening hours, around 9, 10 p.m., Indiana, you're dropping to the 20s and the teens. It's knocking on the door of Ohio and Michigan. The entire state of Tennessee and Kentucky split in half, where one part of the state and the eastern part of the state is in the 40s, and then the other part is in the single digits, 10 degrees at around 9, 10, 11 p.m. in Memphis. Tennessee, Little Rock, you're in the single digits, splitting the state of Alabama in half at this point. And let's just go on and take it. Let's go on and take it all the way to about Friday morning. And look at this. You're waking up to single digits in Huntsville, Alabama, or maybe around 10 degrees for Atlanta. Shreveport, 12 degrees. Nashville, 3 degrees maybe. It's obviously going to be give or take a degree. And one thing, watch the front in the Carolinas. For my folks in South Carolina and the Carolinas, I know I got a lot of people who view from this area. For example, in Raleigh, Columbia, Myrtle Beach, Orangeburg, might wake up into the 40s or 50s. By the time you get into lunchtime, it's in the 20s in Columbia, where you start off at probably around 50 degrees at midnight. By the time you get into lunchtime, 12 hours later, it's below freezing. By the time you get into the afternoon hours, it's in the mid-20s. And by the time you're getting into dinner time, it's starting to get into the teens. I have a weather station on my roof here in Columbia, South Carolina, and even though I'm not going to see snow in this system, I'm really looking forward to just kind of making observations with this Arctic front, because east of the Appalachian Mountains, these fronts aren't as tight gradient as this, meaning they kind of get delayed. The Appalachian Mountains actually delays the cold air even here for North Carolina. That's why it looks colder down here in Atlanta, Columbia, than it does, in Charlotte a little bit. But, like I said, you're getting into the evening of the 23rd. You're in the single digits in the Ohio Valley. This is where, obviously, the epicenter of the coldest air will be up here. But as far as the eastern U.S., the Ohio Valley is going to get some of the worst weather. Strong winds, the temperatures, the snow, rain change and snow, just ridiculous. By the time we get into Saturday morning, waking up to widespread teens, well below freezing all the way down to central Florida. I mean, pick out where you are on the map. You're below zero for good chunks of Illinois and Indiana. Cincinnati, very, very cold. Probably going to get below zero for your Christmas Eve morning. And by the time we're getting into highs, it's going to struggle for areas almost everybody in the South, unless you border the Gulf Coast or in Florida. You guys are probably not going to get above freezing. Certainly, each mile you get north, the colder it gets. The more you get into this very Arctic air mass. So Christmas Eve, doing any last-second things, hanging out with family, you certainly won't be outside with wind chills probably 20 to 30 degrees below zero, which we're about to talk about. But just unreal cold. And by the time you get into Christmas morning, it is still frigid for everybody. Christmas Day, as far as highs, 30s still all the way in the southeast, 20s for Tennessee, for Virginia, Washington, D.C. in the 20s, New York City, Boston, Binghamton, all well below freezing. Scranton, Pittsburgh, only 12 degrees for a high for Christmas Day. I can name off every city on the map here, but, that I would be using up a lot of time. I already talk way too much according to some people, but I know. You guys always tell me don't worry about what other people think, but that's the thing. I get to rambling in these videos, and the next thing I do, I look down, and it's 37 minutes long. So I just pump out the content for you guys, and I enjoy it, and I'm very passionate about it. And I just like to talk a lot when it comes to weather, because hardly anybody outside of YouTube, there's nobody to really talk weather with, and you guys give me an audience, and I'm blessed to have that. So here I go again, talking nonstop. Waking up the morning of the 26th, still hanging on those single-digit lows, and still very cold across the southeast, widespread 20s. I want to show some love to my folks in the deep south. I just want to give you an idea how insane the gradient is with this Arctic front. So we're getting into, let's stop it right here. I mean, you're getting into the 60s in Jackson, Mississippi, low to mid 50s into Memphis, Tennessee. And then look, I mean, this is probably around 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Look at the Arctic front knocking on the door of Memphis and Jackson. So we'll stop it right here. This is around middle of the afternoon, give or take an hour, right? Thursday afternoon. You're thinking, well, where's all this cold air? Suddenly, look at this. It's saying in Memphis in basically 1 hour. In 1 hour. I'm going to move this once. That's 1 hour. It goes from 52 degrees in Memphis Thursday afternoon to 25 degrees in Memphis. That's how insane this is. So Jackson, same thing. 60s. Goes from the 60s to the 30s in 2 hours. So, same thing with Birmingham. You're waking up, you're in the 50s at around 9, 10 o'clock in the evening, and then all of a sudden the front moves through, and then suddenly, by the time you get into around midnight, you're in the 20s. I mean, this is just ridiculously cold, guys. Same thing for Atlanta. It's going to blast through. It's going to be in the 50s in the middle of the night, then the cold front will blast through in the middle of the night, and you'll go to sleep in the 50s in Atlanta, and then you'll wake up and it'll be in the teens. So this is going to be just a shock to your system. It's going to be one of those cold fronts where even if you're not fascinated with the weather or interested, you are going to you can walk outside and you'll know it's coming, and you'll feel this front move through. Very, very just a dynamic front. Let's talk about wind chills here. So Wednesday afternoon, look at this. I mean, you're 30 to 40 degrees below zero in the Dakotas and Montana. You keep this moving. This thing's blasting south. This is the cold front. Strong winds associated with it. We'll look at this is wind chills for Thursday morning of the 22nd. You got some areas that are 50 degrees below zero as far as how it feels. Like when the wind's just howling and the air temperature's already cold. These aren't actual temperatures. These are wind chills. By the time you get into the middle of the day, Thursday afternoon, wind chill is 10 degrees in Dallas. Wind chill is negative 12 in Oklahoma City, negative 20 in Kansas City. It's just now starting to move into St. Louis. Omaha, in the middle of the day, Thursday, it's negative 30 degrees as a wind chill. Minneapolis, you're negative 20-something degrees. It's just insane. By the time you're getting into Friday morning, you have a wind chill in Memphis of negative 9 degrees, negative 10 in Little Rock. You're in the negatives in Dallas. St. Louis, 20 degrees or colder below zero in St. Louis and Kansas City. You go on and move eastward with this, and here it comes. Negative 5, and let's just go on and just take it all the way to Saturday morning, Christmas Eve morning. 7 degrees is a wind chill in Columbia, 6 in Charlotte. Look at these almost single-digit wind chills all the way to the Gulf Coast. Look at these teens wind chills down here into Florida. Below zero, basically from the Mid-South northward. It's going to be dangerous. It really is, guys. And this just maintains in the Ohio Valley with strong winds just whipping through. So, we're 16 minutes in, and we're just talking about the storm system. And let's talk about it. So, we're only going to focus in on the Euro. So this is around Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening for the Dakotas and Minnesota. You got light to moderate snow breaking out anywhere in these states. The snowfall ratios are going to be so insane. It's going to be snowing in such cold temperatures that anything that falls is just going to blow around. It's not going to melt or anything. So even if you just get some light snow, that light snow ain't going anywhere. And that's for basically everybody with this entire system. Let's go on and dip this south. By the time we're waking up Thursday morning, snow begins to move into Kansas City, light at first, but then it picks up. Snow's starting to knock on the doorstep of Chicago. It's flirting with snow all the way as far south as Oklahoma City, but just not quite. Omaha, it's snowing in at a moderate pace for Thursday morning of the 22nd. And let me tell you, it's snowing with temperatures that are well below zero. It's not like it's snowing in a marginal setup. You're not going to have it. The snowfall ratios are just going to be insane. They really are. There's going to be like 20 to 30 to 1, meaning you can get 20 inches of snow to 1 inch of liquid equivalent, if that makes any sense. But, we get into about midday Thursday, heavier snow begins to set up in Kansas City. You might start off as brief rain in areas of St. Louis, southeast Missouri, and basically the southern half of Illinois. I really think it'd start off as rain, but not for long. You got rain changes into snow in northwest Arkansas. Look at far northeast Oklahoma. Some moderate snow showing up. Eastern Kansas. It's snowing pretty good. You get into about Thursday afternoon, rain changing the snow in St. Louis and probably snowing at a very heavy clip in very cold temperatures. Rain beginning to switch to snow in Chicago. Low pressure starts to ride out of Illinois into Indiana. And this is for around Thursday evening of the 22nd. Heavy rain changes to heavy snow, and it starts picking up fast because, one, the surface low begins to deepen. And then you look here, rain begins to shift to some light snow as far south as Memphis, maybe the northwest corner of Mississippi. And then look here, kind of in the Mississippi Valley, Quad States regions right here. There's an area of heavy snow. Even down here, I've had a lot of people wondering about southern Illinois. Well, yeah, you might start off as rain, but I think you switch to some pretty heavy snow. Let's talk about the eastern U.S., and we're still talking about these you folks out here. It's mainly all rain for Indiana, but as this continues to move through, we're getting at this point into the middle of the night, Thursday into Friday. It's right in the middle of the night, right around midnight. Low pressure continues to deepen right here. That's riding this tight gradient of a cold front. Another secondary low tries to develop right here. And then you got rain changing to snow, very brief period, as far south as Nashville, maybe even Huntsville. And then rain changing to snow from most of Kentucky. It'll work. The snow will obviously work west to east. And then it starts snowing in Indianapolis. How much snow? I really think Indiana, areas of Ohio, and even southern Michigan, it's going to be a hard area to figure out. It just all depends on where this surface low decides to ride. But regardless, Chicago, I think you're going to be in for blizzard conditions. It's going to be a blizzard right before Christmas. Friday morning, we're waking up, all this rain's changing to snow. And, for most of Ohio, Cleveland, this is going to be very impactful for areas who aren't even seeing a lot of snow. I can't reiterate that enough. I can't tell you guys enough. You're going to get a wind-driven rain, going to basically a wind-driven snowstorm. And it might only last for several hours. But, for example, you stop it here Friday morning, Cleveland, you're switching from rain to probably a burst of heavy snow. It's going to stick on everything. Because, one, the cold air is ushering in. It's not like it's snowing in a marginal setup. For my folks, I've had a couple people ask about Western Virginia. I don't know how much snow is going to fall, but what I do know is if you're waking up Friday morning, I think you'll go to bed and it'll be kind of mildish. By the time you're waking up, you could have rain changing to snow down here in western areas, and especially the mountainous areas of Virginia. And then all of West Virginia, I think, will have a transition to snow. And then you keep this going, and you still just have snow wrapping around in this entire area right here where you're going to get blizzard conditions. Little low pressure tries to show up here. We got to watch this, but there's just not enough cold air funneling in yet. Midday Friday, rain changing to snow for Binghamton, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Buffalo. And by then you lose the system. And, unfortunately for you folks in southern New England who want a white Christmas, there's already a lot of snow on the ground in a lot of areas of the Northeast, but who want snow flying around just before Christmas? This low pressure is just not favorable for y'all. It's just cutting right inside, bringing a lot of warm, moist air in, and you're not going to have a changeover, I don't think. But a lot of activity back here in the Ohio Valley still flying around as you're getting into Christmas Eve. And, yeah, guys, this is going to be a high-impact event. It is. Blizzard conditions, guys. Potential wind gusts will start us off afternoon of Wednesday. And we'll work this way through. You can obviously tell where the front is. It's right here. You see how the winds are just kind of relatively calm, pretty normal for this area of the country. Well, this low pressure flies off the eastern slopes of the Rockies. This cold front begins to drag down. We'll stop this, around Thursday morning. You got winds gusting as it's moving through Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Tulsa. Gusting, all of Kansas is gusting to 40 to 50 miles per hour. This front moves through Oklahoma City with a bang where you just got calm winds, and all of a sudden you got 30, 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts. This continues. We get all the way to about Thursday afternoon. The front's moving through. St. Louis, same deal. Just this entire area, along this front and behind it, 40 to 50 mile per hour winds are working its way through. And we'll switch to the eastern U.S., and this is when it gets really dangerous. This front's moving through. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know where the front is right here. 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gust riding along this front and behind it. Very windy, but as this front blows through, it's already going to be very windy ahead of this Arctic front in the Northeast with just multiple impulses of energy that's firing up a lot of strong winds. Already power outages, I think. There's a lot going on this map. You got multiple areas of energy that's really pumping up some strong winds, but the strongest winds are along the surface low. And as we're getting into Friday morning, this is when the winds get quite intense in the Ohio Valley. 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts from Iowa to Ohio. And I really think the southern tip of Lake Michigan and then Lake Erie is going to potentially have hurricane force winds. And look at this. By the time you're getting into midday Friday, winds gusting, howling out the north in Chicago at 40, 50 miles per hour with snow falling. Same thing for literally the entire Ohio Valley into areas of Kentucky. These are going to cause power outages. I can't tell you enough, guys. One, you got the precipitation. Two, you got the Arctic air with the dangerous wind chills. And three, you got these strong winds. You're getting into Friday afternoon. The winds are absolutely howling on Lake Erie. I would not want to be a boat on Lake Erie. This is around Friday evening, the day before Christmas Eve. The winds are just ripping in these areas. And finally, as you're getting to Christmas Eve, it's still very windy, but the winds begin to calm down. So let's talk about snowfall totals. And this is how much snow that the European ensembles are showing. Now, this is 10-to-1 ratio. It's going to be a much higher ratio than this. So, for example, it's showing 3 to 4 inches of snow in Kansas. you can go on and add, I think, a few inches to that at probably at least. Same thing with Kansas City. It only wants to show a half a foot of snow in Chicago, but I think more snow than that's going to fall because it's going to be snowing. This model's not accounting for how cold it's going to be snowing at. But you see all these areas, this is what the ensemble run is showing. We switch and we look at the GEFS ensembles, and there's not a huge difference. It does show just more snow in general in Iowa. Southeast Minnesota wants to throw over a half a foot of snow in Minneapolis. For my folks down here a little bit more south, throws you a bone in northern Arkansas, northeast Oklahoma, but just not a lot. We switch and we look. Heck, let's look at the Canadian model. How much snow does the Canadian model run show? Well, it's just very odd because it shows snow all the way down here. So it's hard to believe that. But this is actually from a system after this. So, let's just go on and look at the national blend of all models. I feel like that's a reasonable thing to look at. And honestly, I feel like it's doing the best because I think the totals will be the highest. And, Chicago, over a foot. We'll take a closer look at this area here in a second. But, for Missouri, I think the entire state of Missouri will see accumulating snow. I think a good chunk of Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas will see accumulating snow also. White Christmas for this entire area. As you get down here in northern Arkansas, it becomes a question. But, look at Illinois, of course, yeah. And Indiana. Of course, the northern portions of these states get the most snow. But even for you folks in the southern sections, where sometimes the weather can be totally different, I think you'll get enough snow to make a white Christmas. I really do. Even if it's just 2 inches of snow on the ground, when it snows that 2 inches, there's a good chance that 2 inches ain't going to go nowhere because it's going to be so cold. A little bit closer look to the Great Lakes and upper Midwest. Chicago wants, the blend of all models wants to show 13 inches of snow. Milwaukee, same kind of deal. Madison, over a foot. The eastern shorelines of Lake Michigan with lake-enhanced snow, a foot to 2 feet of snow. It's going to be a snow globe up here, literally. It looks like one right now. Look at the enhancement off Lake Superior. I know I got one guy who watches from the UP in Michigan very faithfully. Your guys are going to get buried up here. Let's see if we can talk straight. But 2 to 3 feet of snow, guys. Detroit, over a half a foot of snow. Cleveland, start showing over a half a foot of snow. Northern Indiana, look at you folks down here. That's a lot of snow. I saw somebody say this area south of Lake Michigan gets gypped a lot, but I don't think you're going to get gypped off this. This is going to be a winter wonderland up here. It is, and it's just going to be something like out of the Christmas Vacation movie that I think is actually filmed out. Well, it's not technically filmed, but it's kind of based out the Chicago area. I love watching that movie. But anyways, a lot of snow, guys. We look at the eastern U.S. Let's go on and look right here. This is from the European ensembles. Ignore this little area right here. But, it doesn't show much in Tennessee for my folks in Tennessee. But I really think that you guys could get a brief period of snow enough to maybe put a glaze on the ground. So by the time you're waking up, Friday morning, certain areas of Tennessee I think will look white. I do think that. But as you get into Kentucky, the high chances get higher. And then you get into the Ohio Valley. Obviously, it's a different story. This wants to put, Cincinnati, maybe an inch or two of snow. It's going to be hard in these areas. You need this surface low to trend back east. A lot of people are wish casting it to trend east, but at the end of the day, you got to talk about what it looks like is going to happen. You look at the European ensembles from this. The GFS ensembles. Not a whole lot's changed. Shows a little bit more snow further south, but figure out where you are on the map, and that's what it's showing. The blend of all models, which I think is the best thing to look at. It dumps about an inch of snow on Nashville. Memphis, very close to an inch, maybe a half an inch of snow. We'll see if we can get that to happen. Kentucky, widespread 1 to 2 to 3 inch totals. Then you get into the Ohio Valley, widespread 3 to 4 inch totals in the southern, basically always, the big three of the Ohio Valley, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. The southern halves of the states, maybe 2 to 3, 4 inches of snow. The northern halves, maybe over a half a foot of snow. For my folks up in the Northeast, this will just be only for the interior Northeast, the mountainous areas. So, that's that. So we'll continue to keep you guys updated. So let's round this video off by talking about, and let's try if we can get some hopeful energy on this, because this is specifically what I'm hoping for my folks in the Southeast and my neck of the woods. And at this point, that feels like a pipe dream. but we have seen crazier things happen. So after this system clears, this is the system we have been yapping about for days. This clears. First off, I wouldn't be surprised if you got some flurries flying around Christmas Eve morning, all the way down into North Texas, Oklahoma. There's going to be a lot of impulses and pieces of energies flying around after this system. Some northwest flow events showing up in the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina, West Virginia, Virginia. We go through in time, it's very cold. Christmas morning, obviously very cold. You got the lake effect snows just chugging away. There's no end in sight up here, just chugging away up here. Look at this. As we're getting into Christmas, you're wrapping up Christmas, Christmas Day. Unfortunately, the timing isn't well. But, getting into the morning of the 26th, you're getting a little piece of energy that's shooting down the base of this ridge. You still got a digging trough right here, right? This brings a little area off the northern stream of some, light to moderate snow. Shoots it through Iowa very quickly, rides through St. Louis, areas of Missouri. This just adds more snow that's what's already on the ground at this point in time. And then look, it gets all the way down to Tennessee, northern Alabama, and Mississippi. And then it kind of fizzles out as we're getting into the evening of the 26th. And you're thinking, well, man, where did it go? There's enough cold air as far south as Georgia and South Carolina. And you think this is heading right towards you, but then it fizzles out. And I think it mainly is just because there's no interaction between this and anything down here. So it gets squashed under the trough and it just kind of dissipates. But this is what I talk about. We've been honking at the horn about this for the last several days at the end of these videos. There is a lot of energy around, and I think the models are struggling with it. I'm not saying that we're going to have some huge pop-up winter storm right after Christmas for the Southeast, but I am saying there's going to be something around. Is that some just light snow kind of far south? What is that? But, it fizzles out. We get into the morning of the 27th. Not a whole lot going on. And then that's pretty much it. We lose the pattern. We lose the opportunity. But the European doesn't show much at all either, but it does show snow up here. Same kind of deal. Morning of the 26th. Some snow showers make it as far south as Tennessee. And then after that, the European doesn't show much love for it. What does the Canadian model do? Well, the Canadian model kind of shows it too. We'll fast forward here in time after this system. Canadian model, same thing as the GFS. Shoots a piece of energy. It's further west. And you're thinking there's about to be some kind of connection here, right? Well, it moves down, gets into Arkansas, delivers some light snow for the evening of the 26th. It kind of gets more enhanced. And you're thinking, okay, we're incoming right here. It's snowing all the way down to Shreveport, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis. And you're thinking, oh man, this is about to happen. The morning of the 27th, you still got cold air around. And then again, it loses its connection. There's still some moisture around, but it really just kind of loses it. And then by the time we get into, the morning of the 28th, we're losing our cold air and we're losing the system. But that just tells you that there's energy around. I can't stress that enough. And this is what energy looks like. These vibrant yellow and orange colors, right? And this swings through. This is obviously the big storm, right? You see the closed ISO bars right here. That tells us the storm closes off, gets a negative tilt to it. That means it's a very strong storm, and it certainly will be. It's what we just talked about for the last 30 minutes. But look as we continue. Getting into Christmas morning, a little piece of energy flies through. That's what pops off that little bit of light snow in Oklahoma off the GFS. This flies through, doesn't do anything for the Southeast. But look as this other piece of energy starts digging down Christmas night into the Dakotas. This swings down off the base, basically the eastern slope of this tall ridge in the western U.S., which, by the way, we need to keep trending taller. This digs really hard, but we need to dig even further southwest. We need this to dig down into here and then close up and make some kind of connection. But look at this area of energy right here. Not as robust as the big storm that just moved through, but it still shows it. This digs in, tries to get its act together, but doesn't quite, and then it just kind of gets strung out. But there's a lot of pieces of energy flying around, guys. So stay alert for this period because something can sneak up. I'm not saying it will, but something can sneak up over the next couple days. And I would not be surprised. I'm not wish casting, but I would not be surprised if suddenly, come the end of the week, we're talking about some kind of event for early next week. So we'll figure it out, guys. One thing I really briefly mentioned is there's rain going to be falling overnight across the deep south. There's a chance that as we're getting into tomorrow morning, there's some snow flying around in basically the southwest mountains of North Carolina, maybe Georgia, northern Georgia. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of this rain overnight into tomorrow morning mixes with some sleet or some flurries. And if this moisture can get a little bit further north into North Carolina, it could mix with some flakes or sleet. You see the blue showing up if you squint your eyes really hard. I would not be surprised if Asheville sees some flakes flying around sometime tomorrow. But it's not going to be a big event. But do not be surprised if you hear about some flakes flying around in those areas. So that's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. And I'll give you another long update in the morning. God bless.